honored to have the opportunity to introduce my dear friend and mentor, Dr. Annie Finch. She is our Fall 2022 Poet in Residence. This year, she will also be the judge of the Iris N. Spencer Awards. Almost a year ago, when Dr. Finch was our Fall 2021 featured reader, we had a conversation over dinner with several members of the WCU Poetry Center Advisory Council about Dr. Finch's passion, teaching form, and meter. I knew that she'd been working for years on ways to conceptualize the magic of meter for students and teachers of poetry. These lectures are a true combination of Dr. Finch's deep appreciation for the mystical, earth-centered spiritual practice with Wicca and her expertise in poetic craft. Dr. Annie Finch's 7 books of poetry include Eve, Calendars, Among the Goddesses, and Spells, new and selected poems. Annie's poetry has appeared in Poetry, Paris Review, New York Times, the Penguin Book of 20th Century American Poetry. Her books about poetry include The Body of Poetry and A Poet's Craft, a comprehensive guide to making and sharing her poetry. Annie holds a PhD from Stanford and teaches online classes at anniefinch.com and in the Poetry Witch community. She's passionate about helping to bring the pleasure and power of rhythm and meter back into poetry. We are in for a treat this afternoon. There is no better teacher of the elements of meter than Dr. Finch. Her work reveals her deep appreciation, love of meter. As a critic on the Poets.org site argued, uniting all of Finch's work is a conception of poetry as essentially incantatory, performative, speaking to the body as much as to the mind. The themes in Finch's poems draw upon earth-centered spirituality, myth, sex, and childbirth. A practicing Wiccan, her poetry is inspired largely by her relationship with the natural world. Annie Finch knows the rhythmical power of meter, and the incredible thing is, once you studied with her, you, as I have multiple times, you begin to understand the music inherent in the English language. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Annie Finch to WCU for the first Finch lecture, The Magic of Meter and the Meter of Fire, Anapest. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Charisse Pollard, and thank you, Westchester, for bringing me here for these lectures on meter and prosody. There is nothing I consider more important than to share this knowledge. Why? Why does it matter? We live in an age where anyone can publish a book of poetry online in 20 minutes. And honestly, people can write poetry any way they want. If you ask most people what is a poem, they will tell you, well, tell me, what is a poem, somebody?
A piece of art that represents their society around them.
A piece of art that represents society around you, okay. Any other definition? What's a poem?
Sometimes they rhyme.
Sometimes they rhyme, and sometimes they don't. Right? Okay. Yeah, but sometimes they do. Anybody else? Yeah. You want to add to that?
It's also like generally pretty vague. It's like usually up to like the reader's interpretation of the critique.
It's open to the reader's interpretation. That's a very common definition of poetry, is that it's language that can be interpreted any way that we want. It's evocative language, original language, that kind of thing, right? Sometimes people say it's sincere language. Anybody else have a thought? Sometimes it rhymes, sometimes it doesn't. Okay, the thing about all these definitions is that they're forgetting a really important aspect of poetry, and I think the reason is because now we see things on the page, whereas when poetry originally started, all of the words that hold a culture together were not written on a page. They were carried, right? They were carried in the memory. So think of a word that you carry in your memory. Like, for example, if I say, how many days are in July? How many days are in July? Somebody tell me. 37. Okay, how did you figure that out?
Counting on the knuckles.
Oh, okay, I don't even know that one. That's a
the
good one.
January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December. So if
Cool.
it hits on a knuckle, it's a 31-day
Oh my god. Does anybody else know that one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Never heard of that.
month.
Does anyone else know another way? Yeah? 30 days as September, April, June, and November, all the rest have 31, right. So that's the way I always do it. And if you don't know the knuckle thing, that's how you do it. So if that didn't have meter or rhyme to it, you wouldn't remember it, right? Most likely. I mean, that's how you remember it, right? So meter, if you look at our definition sheet, meter is a way to strengthen language's rhythm by shaping it into recognizable patterns. So we strengthen the rhythm, and that connects the words to our body, right? So if you want to remember something, if you're an actor and you need to remember lines, they tell you move your body, and then your body will remember it, body memory, then the words will be associated with your body. In the same way, meter, which is a regular pattern of rhythmic language, a regular pattern of rhythmic language, a regular pattern of rhythmic language, that regularity brings it into your body. And when it's in your body, you will remember it. So this is this particular powerful magic that poetry has, that we remember the rhythms, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P. L, M, N, O, P, so it'll match up, right? We're always looking for the symmetry, the pattern, the physical balance. And that's how language becomes part of our body. Having devoted my entire life to what is this feeling? It started out when I was a little kid and I would get this weird feeling in my spine when I heard certain words. It might even be like somebody's name, you know, just like, just some strange name, I don't know, some interesting name with a rhythm to it. One of the ones out of Mahalia Jackson, the singer, right? Mahalia Jackson, boom, 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 boom. Or Theodore Roosevelt, bum, 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 bum. You hear something that has that, and it would give me this feeling in my spine, and it would give me that sort of magical feeling. We all have this because we have in our bodies, we have our heartbeats, we have our breath, and we have our sense of day and night, and our sense of birth and death, and all of these connections to repeating and rhythms and cycles. So it's this physical reality that takes it out of your brain and brings it into your body, and that's something that poetry does, other things don't do. So I'd like you all to just put your hand on your wrist and notice, okay, so you feel your pulse there? Okay, you put your fingers lightly on your pulse so you can feel the pulse, and then just take a breath, normal breath, in and out, and as you're doing it, count how many times you hear your heartbeat. So there's a ratio of your heartbeat to your breath. Breathe in, breathe out. Breathe in, breathe out. Breathe in, breathe out. How many heartbeats did you feel each time you breathed in or out? Three or four. 3 or 4. So if you look around the entire world at your classic line of poetry, it's going to be a breath to say the line, and it's going to be 3 or 4 beats of meter in the line. Just look at the first one on our sheet here. Through the upper and lower words, body and soul, through your softness and hardness, your wetness and royal. Through the upper and lower words, body and soul, breath. Through your softness and hardness, your wetness and royal, breath. May I rock in your mystery, speaking in whole breath, like the rockweeds you rock in your undersea coil breath. How many beats do you hear? Stronger beats in each of these lines. Through the upper and lower words, body and soul. What do I mean by beats? A beat is, yep, like the tempo of a song. Okay, it's like when you get the beat, like when the note gets hit harder, is the stronger, harder part. So when you're working with language, it's going to be the syllable that gets a beat. And how can we tell in language? Like, with music you can tell if it's louder. What about with language? How can you tell if it has a beat? Like, somebody tell me, what's your guess in this first line? What's the first syllable that has a beat to it? What's the first syllable that seems stronger than the others? Is it through? Is it the? Is it up? Is it Is it and? What's your guess?
Would it be upper?
Up, yeah. Just one syllable, so up. Up is stronger. Now through has a little bit of a beat. I heard some people nodding their head when they heard through. But what we're looking for, we're not just looking for emphasis, we're looking for the stronger emphasis. So through the up, clearly the up is stronger than the through, right? So through the upper and lower worlds, body and soul. What's the next one after up that gets a beat?
Soft.
Okay. Which one?
Soft.
Soft, okay. Through your softness and heart. Yeah, exactly. In the next line, it is definitely soft is the first one. Yep. If we go back to that first line, through the upper and lower worlds, body and soul. What's the next one?
Low.
Low, okay. Up, low, yep. So if you want, you can take out a pen or a pencil and you can begin to mark these things. Because what we're starting to do right now is called scanning. If you look on your sheet, you'll see scansion on your definition sheet. The goal of scansion is to recognize, understand, and appreciate the basic pattern of a poem's meter. Scansion is to mark these accents, and then we begin to understand how the poem is working its magic on us. Yeah?
Is there a specific symbol we use?
Yes, great question. The symbol that we're using is actually on the bottom of your sheet. It's called a wand. I've invented my own simple names for these symbols. Sometimes people call it an accent mark or a brev or something like that. But yeah, this mark right here is going to mark the stronger syllables. And so what we're doing in this first lecture, we're going to talk a little bit about why meter has power to it, and then we're going to introduce some of these basic tools for hearing meter. And we're also going to introduce the first meter of the 5. We're going to be actually talking about 5 different meters in these lectures. And each day I'm going to be wearing a different color because in my experience, each of these meters has a different energy, and I've associated these energies with colors. So the meter we're doing today is the red meter, and I'm wearing red because to me this meter is about fire, it's about passion, it's about desire, it's about creativity. It's a very powerful meter, and I start with it because to me this is the meter of life, the meter of our being in the world. So that's why these poems we're reading today are all about this meter, and we're starting off with the power of fire. And I associate these meters, all of these different rhythms that we're going to be learning, 5 different rhythms of poetry. I associate them all with very powerful forces. And I'm not the only one, doing this. If you go around the history of poetry, this is why poetry matters. And it's so funny because if you look at our world now, people often use the word poetry to signify something rather special, right? Like they'll say, oh, poetry in motion, or, that dessert was pure poetry, it was so good. Have you ever heard people use the word like that? So, and you ever wonder why? What's so great about poetry? Well, I don't think it's just because it's like any words you want it to be in an original way. I believe the reason we still think of poetry as magic is because of this rhythmic magic that it has to connect our thoughts, our words, our minds right into our body. And the combination of like mind and body being together is an incredibly powerful thing. It links people together. This is why, advertising people or political people, they pay attention to rhythm, right? When they want you to remember something, we used to say, no, we won't go, or what's it? 1, 2, 3, 4. We don't want your fucking war. That was what a chant we had in the Vietnam War days. It has that beat to it, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. Boom, 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 boom. It's that rhythm that gets the words into your body. This is incredibly powerful, right? I mean, there's money involved. There's politics involved. I mean, this is a real thing. This is not just some like random choice, like, oh, okay, I like to write in meter. This is actually powerful. And this is one of the reasons that I'm so passionate about it, because I'm actually sharing something that I believe has the power to change the world, literally. That when poets can use this power to remind people who we are, to get us back into our bodies in this messed up culture we have that is often so out of touch with reality, with nature, with human connection, where people are so often lonely or isolated or taking antidepressants or just, so confused with all the money that we have and people still not being happy so often. I believe that this power of poetry and rhythm and meter really has the capacity to remind us who we are as human beings by bringing our bodies into our awareness, which also brings in our souls. If you go back into the cultures before writing, before all of this extra stuff that we have around us, it was the poets who remembered the stories, the histories, the myths, the legends of the culture. It was the poets who were able to heal. The shamans, the medicine people were the poets. They had the power of poetry that could heal. We still see this in Harry Potter, for example, or you watch some witch movie and they're doing a spell. They're not just gonna do a spell in like random free verse on the page. They're gonna do a spell that has a beat to it, right? Because the beat has power. So we still know this. And people who are writing poetry, like you, or learning to appreciate poetry, can channel this power. And I think it really can be super helpful, which is why I'm so excited about it. Okay, so you have a symbol now. You have this wand symbol, and you're marking the strong syllables. So you've got up and low. What's the next one? Anybody want to take a shot? Somebody who hasn't spoken yet. Yeah? You have a shot? You there in the blue shirt?
Soft and hard.
Okay, soft and hard, yep, on the next line, okay. What other ones do people see that you think are strong? Do you have one right here? You in the cute hat?
Wetness and royal.
Yeah, wet, okay, so the syllable would be wet and royal, right? Okay, so that second one has 4 strong syllables, right? Soft, hard, wet, royal. Let's say the line all together. Some people get confused. If you think too much, you can overthink and get confused. It always helps to listen, use your body, use your ear. So let's all say this second line together aloud. Ready? 1, 2, 3.
Through your softness and hardness, your wetness and royal.
Okay, one more time. Through your
Softness and hardness, your wetness and royal.
And a roiling, of course, is that kind of bubbling, boiling feeling that things have when they kind of turn over. So I wonder if it's related to the word boil. Sometimes you can learn a lot by looking at the history of a word. So yeah, so the 4 beats, you all heard them when we did it together, right? So what about the next line? May I rock in your mystery, speaking in a whole. Let's do it together, and then I'd like everyone to just put a wand over the syllables that feel the strongest to you. So 1, 2, 3. May I rock in your mystery, speaking and whole. Where did you have them?
I had one after rock,
Uh-huh.
halfway through mystery,
Yep.
halfway through speaking, and after hold.
Okay, great. So the syllables would be rock, miss, speak, whole, right? Okay. Did anyone else have the same ones? Anybody else have different ones? Okay, so everybody who's saying, did you have a different one or the same one? The same one, okay. So everybody could hear it, right? It's right there in our bodies, in our ears. So there's 4 and 4, and then if we go back to that first line, so far we only had 2, up and low. Do you think there might be extra ones in there that we haven't heard yet? In that first line, through the upper and lower worlds, body and soul.
Maybe body.
Yeah, bod, the first syllable of body, right? Okay, that's the third one. Would there be a fourth one? Yeah? Soul, yeah, okay, there we go. So we have 4 in each line, right? Okay, now, how do we know? Sometimes people can get confused, so it's useful to just realize what is it about these syllables that makes them different from the others? How can we tell that these are the ones? We feel it in our body, we feel it, we hear it in our ears, but if you had to put a word to it or describe it to somebody, how could you describe what we're hearing here? How are they different from the other syllables? Any clue? Yeah. There's not really a wrong answer, so just, how does it seem to you they're different? Do you want to answer? You? Yes.
They have like a harder tone to it.
A harder feeling, a harder tone, you said?
Yeah, and they kind of like the syllables stand out more than the other ones
Yeah.
do.
Yeah, they have a harder tone, the syllables stand out more. Anyone else have a thought? You have a thought?
I was gonna say something. They stand out more when you say it wrong.
They stand out more, yeah.
It feels wrong trying to cut it anywhere else. Like if it was may I rock in and it finished after in, that just doesn't feel
Yeah,
right.
yeah. The end wouldn't be right. So compare the rock and the in. When I rock in your mystery, rock in. What's the difference between rock and in? It's harder, it's clearer, people are saying. Rock in.
I feel like it has like an emotion and like a weight to it.
Yeah, it has more weight to it, okay. What gives it that feeling of weight? Can we be objective about it? Can we like objectively describe something that somebody could maybe measure? Rock in. Yeah?
I think it's the rigidness of the R consonant,
Okay.
kind of, and then
What
I
if
was kind of follow up by like the CK ending, kind of at the end too, so kind of the word where the syllable starts and ends.
Okay.
Very.
But what if we change it to sock in? May I sock in your mystery? Would it still be? You don't think so? It depends on the R? May I sock in your mystery? It's probably the meaning, isn't it? The word in or the or your are smaller words. They're articles, prepositions, whereas this rock or even sock, like sock it to me baby, this like a verb, right? It's a stronger word, it's a verb, it has more meaning. But when you're actually saying it aloud with your voice, acoustically, what's the difference? What were you gonna say?
I'm still thinking really abstract. I was gonna say that it feels like turns in a dance almost, like
Yeah.
you've got like a space where you stop and a space where you start again.
It's a beautiful thing, and so many poems that are in meter and rhythm have been set to music as dances. It's so beautiful, and you could go, may I rock in your mystery, speak, kick and hold. You could just do that, right? And in fact, in ancient Greece, for all of these meters, they had different dance steps that went with them, and they would be out there on the stage, like performing with the meter as they were doing it. So yeah, absolutely so. But there's something much simpler. I think because we're used to English classes, we're used to thinking of things, yeah?
Like the highs and lows that you might put into it.
High and low, it's a higher pitch, in fact. That's one of the things. It's a higher pitch. So, may I rock in your mystery, speaking and whole. It's a higher pitch sound. It's also louder, just plain old louder, right? May I rock in your mystery, speaking and whole. Like if you said, may I rock in your mystery, speaking and whole. That's just about loudness, and it obviously sounds whacked to do it the wrong way, right? So it's louder, it's higher pitched, and there's one more quality that these syllables have that makes them feel accented. Anybody have a thought?
Could it be that there's like each one in between if there's like two syllables?
Yeah, they're sometimes part of, these happen to be part of two syllable words, but not all of them, right? Is that what you mean?
Like through the is two, and then per and like each one in between
Yeah.
is two.
Okay,
Like, they're all-
interesting. Huh, through the. Interesting. Okay, well, normally linguists would say that they are both louder, longer, and higher pitched. Any of those things. Louder, longer, higher pitch creates the sense of an accented syllable or a stronger syllable. So that's useful to keep in mind because sometimes you might get confused. You can't tell if it's accented because you're waiting for it to be louder. Then you might remember, oh, it could be longer too, and that can remind you that you have that. So, okay, it's really wonderful to hear the experience that you've described of experiencing these stressed syllables because it's such an amazing, magical experience, isn't it? You're talking about things like, just taking you out into these different ways of being and being more perceptible, more intense, turning corners, all kinds of things. So it's thinking about language in a physical way. It's such a relief, isn't it? If you've ever done yoga, they're always complaining about monkey mind and too much thinking. And it's just so nice when thinking doesn't have to be a distraction from your body or your physical experience in the world, or even your spiritual or emotional experience, but words can be part of that experience. And meter allows that to happen. So step one of scansion, we're talking about the process of scansion here, which is just marking the rhythm so we can see it. So step one is to put in the wands, and we've done that. We've got up, low, bod, soul, soft, hard, wet, royal, rock, miss, speak, whole. Right? Everybody heard those? So those are our wands, and we actually have 4 on each line, right? So we have a regular rhythm going here, which you could hear if we read the poem aloud, of course. But the second step is really fun. The second step is to put in this little U shape at the bottom of your definitions. You can see right here, it's called a cup, the bottom of your definition shape. So the other syllables are going to get that little U shape. So if you just take your sheet right now and you put the cups over the other syllables that didn't get a wand, have shown through the upper and lower worlds, body and soul. What pattern do you have of cups and wands? Somebody share with me, please. Cup, cup, wand. Is that it? When, like for the first line, what do you have? What pattern now? If you put a cup over the through and the and then you have a wand over up, then you have a cup over and, yes? 2 cups and a wand, okay, over and over, right? Okay, so this is the third step of scansion. The third step is to put in these lines called edges, straight up and down line. If you look at the bottom of your definition sheet, you'll see the scansion tool called an edge. That's step 3 of scansion is when you look for a regular pattern. In this case, it's going to be 2 cups and a wand, as she said. 2 cups and a 1, 2 cups and a 1, 2 cups and a 1. So you look for something that repeats, and when you see the repeating, you just put that line in, and you put it straight down through the word. So it would look like this, like through the upper and lower worlds. So the first step is you put the wand in. Second step, you put in, okay, lower worlds, body and soul. Let's see, like that, right? So through the upper and lower worlds, body and soul. Then we put in the cups. And the last step is, the third step, you put in edges, which are the markers between what we call feet. So every time you see a regular pattern repeating, so we have 2 cups and a 1, where's the next one gonna go? The next edge.
Middle of lower.
Right, in the middle of lower, okay. And the next one? Lower. Where's the next one? In the middle of body, right? Body and soul, like that. Okay. Now maybe some people are wondering about one of the syllables in this line. There's one syllable that might raise some questions because it's a little stronger than the others that have a cup, right? Anybody know what I'm talking about? Is anybody thinking, yeah, but what about worlds? Yeah, worlds is a little stronger, right? So the thing is, it's all about relative. So worlds might be a little stronger, but it's not as strong as bod or up or low, right? It's right in the middle. So this is where the last one on the bottom of your definition sheet comes in. It's called a half one. It's kind of a halfway. It's a little bigger than a cup, but it's smaller than a wand. So you can mark it like that if you want. And that's the beauty of this, is it's completely up to your ear. If you hear it, if you're happy hearing worlds as a cup, you can mark it as a cup. But if you feel funny about that and you really want to give it a little more emphasis, you can recognize that it has a little more weight to it by giving it a half one. And you still have the same pattern of cup, cup, one, cup, cup, one, cup, cup, one. So what you have in a line like this is what I call the meter of fire. This is the meter that's called anapestic. It's actually a very common meter when you go back and think about our experience of poetry. You might even recognize the meter without any words if I say to you, da 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 da. It might even jog something in your memory, like maybe a book that you used to love when you were a kid, maybe. Like maybe something by Dr. Seuss. Like maybe The Cat in the Hat. And the sun did not shine, it was too wet to play, so we stayed there at home all that cold, cold, wet day. Have no fear, said the cat, it is fine just to play, da da da, da da, right? It's the same thing, right? Through the upper and lower worlds, body and soul. Had no fear, said the cat, it is fine just to play. So this, actually Dr. Seuss got this meter when he was moving to England as a very young writer. He was sitting on the deck. I think he couldn't afford to get a bedroom in the boat, so he was sitting on a deck and he was listening to the engines of the boat, and they were going bum 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 bum. This is where he got the rhythm from. It's a very powerful rhythm, but in fact, it's been around for quite a while in English. And if we turn the page, we see there's some incredible poems written in this meter. This is one of my favorites by a wild poet named Swinburne. It's a very political poem, a song of revolution. The heart of the rulers is sick, and the high priest covers his head, for this is the song of the quick that is heard in the ears of the dead. The wind has the sound of a laugh and the clamor of days and of deeds. The priests are scattered like chaff and the rulers broken like reeds. He wrote this around 1840. He was very disillusioned with the state of politics and religion and the hypocrisy of the church at that time in England, and describing just this horrible corruption. He was furious, he was angry, right? This is a very angry poem. And this meter of fire it's a meter of rebellion, it's a meter of revolution, it's a meter of passion and freedom and liberation, which when you think about the Cat in the Hat, that Cat in the Hat is actually a very revolutionary figure, isn't he? The way he's just making a total mess out of everything. And when your mother is out, there's a couple of Anapests for you. So this rhythm is a pretty wild rhythm. It can also be used for love and passion and desire. If you go on the next page, Sarah Teasdale. This is a beautiful love poem. And it's in the same meter. So just because a meter has a certain feeling to it, it doesn't mean that other poems can't use it in different ways. It just means it brings in that element. So does someone want to read this little poem by Sarah Teasdale aloud?
I would live in your love as the seagrasses live in the sea, borne up by each wave as it passes, drawn down by each wave that recedes. I would empty my soul of the dreams that have gathered in me. I would beat with you your heart as it beats. I would follow your soul as it leads.
Thank you, that is beautiful. Let's all do that together. It's only 4 lines, and except for me, the only woman on this sheet. You know, these meters, one of the beauties of these meters, if you're writing in rhythm, is that as of now, they haven't been used a ton in written literature. They were used a lot in oral literature, popular literature that was memorized, but not so much in the canonical written down literature. So it's kind of an open area if you want to try something new and fresh and colonize some of a new kind of writing. But let's read this one aloud together. Ready? I would live in your love. 1, 2, 3. I would live in your love as the sea grasses live in the sea,
borne up by each wave as it passes, drawn down by each wave that recedes. I would empty my soul of the dreams that have gathered in me. I would beat with your heart as it beats. I would follow your soul as it leads.
How does it feel to read that aloud? Do you feel an effect from saying the words in the rhythm?
Yeah.
Where did you feel it? Can you verbalize where you felt it?
I would
I felt it too. I'm
I
trying to
would
think
live
where.
in your love as the sea grasses live in the sea.
I felt it kind of somewhere between my heart and my belly button, somewhere in there. And yeah, it's. I do associate this with like the root chakra though, this meter, and I think probably it does come more from even lower down. But yeah, it's it wakes you up, doesn't it? It does something. Now here's a totally different mood. Check out this one, "The Destruction of Sennacherib" by Lord Byron. Let's read this one aloud together for a bit. I don't know. Should we try the whole thing? Are you all ready? This is a big one. I think we should actually stand up for this one. Okay? To really get this energy out, because this is quite a wild poem. And if you want to pan the camera, feel free, because let's just get it all out, guys. Stand up and let's do this together, okay? And you know, it's a Syrian. The Syrian came down, so I'm going to say, okay, ready? 1, 2, 3.
The Assyrian came down like the wolf on the fold, and his cohorts were gleaming in purple and gold, and the sheen of their spears was like stars on the sea, when the blue wave rolls nightly on Galilee. Like the leaves of the forest when summer is green, that hosts with their banners at sunset were seen. Like the leaves of the forest when autumn hath blown, that host on the morrow lay withered and strown.
The sword, what's it?
Angel of death spread his wings on the blast, and breathed in the face of the foe as he passed. And the eyes of the sleepers waxed deadly and chill, and their hearts but once heaved and forever grew still. And there lay the steed with his nostril all wide, but through it there rolled not the breath of his pride. And the foam of his gasping lay white on the turf, and cold as the spray of the rock-beating surf. And there lay the riders, distorted and pale, with the dew on his brow and the rust on his mail. And the tents were all silent, for the banners alone, the lances unlifted, the trumpet unblown, and the widows of Asher are loud in their wail, and the idols are broke in the temple of Baal. And the might of the Gentile, smote by the sword, hath melted like snow in the glance of the Lord.
Okay. Woo! So here we have an imperialist poem about destruction of non-European people, not cool. On the other hand, look at the power of the rhythm. What if we take rhythms like this and we use them for our purposes? These rhythms have been lying dormant for decades, centuries, really. I mean, this is 150 years old, is it? I mean, it's powerful, yeah? And this is a poem that people have memorized, that has stayed alive for 170 years because of the power of this rhythm and how skillfully he's used it. Imagine using this rhythm for other purposes, you know? This is a great, great rhythm. I have looked for examples of 20th century poets using these rhythms. Not very many. Not very many. It has really been lost because at the beginning of the 20th century, this whole thing came in with the typewriter, right? With the typewriter, poets were suddenly able to control exactly the way things looked on the page. And at the same time, we had creative writing and English start to come up, and people sitting in classrooms looking at the page. So poetry stopped being the thing to memorize, to read aloud, to inspire people to come together. It became something to look at in a classroom on a page, and it became all about line breaks and analysis, and it stopped being about that kind of powerful inspiration. So this is a tool that is just sitting there waiting to be picked up and used, and it's powerful stuff. So one thing I want to point out is that there are a couple of places where the pattern was not exact. Did anybody notice that? Like on page 2 of that poem, there lay the steed with his nostrils all wide. Did you notice that, anybody? Mm-hmm. It's missing a cup, right? It's and there. Everything else is mostly cup, cup, one, cup, cup, one, cup, cup, one, but here we just have cup one cup. So is that a problem? Did Byron mess up? No. It's a variation, the musician knows. Yeah, that's just a variation. It is no problem. If you're writing in this rhythm, I've chosen examples that are very, very regular, you know, because we're teaching and we're learning it here, but it's no problem to put in something, you know, to skip a cup here and there, as long as you keep the basic rhythm going. So I'm hoping that you all, that Maureen will invite you to write your own poem in this rhythm. You know, maybe today, maybe right now we can start. Let's see how much time we have. Yeah, we have a little bit of time. Let's see, we have Annabelle Lee, a poem that a lot of people know in this rhythm. And we're gonna skip over that one. Then we have another one of mine about fire and passion and liberation, goddess riding the sun. But are you all ready to give this a shot? You want to give it a try to write your own Anapest? And we'll see how they come out? Yes. All right, so let's do it. Just see if you can write 4 lines in this rhythm. You'll have 4 Anapests in each line, so you're going to use the same one as, I guess all of the ones that we've been doing are all the same rhythm we've got. You can take the rhythm of the Assyrian came down, like a wolf on the fold. That's a good model to use. And just write a new stanza on any topic you want in that exact rhythm. And my advice is don't think about it too much. Just kind of get it into your head. I'm gonna just do a little oral drumming, like a drumming sound with my voice for a minute to get you into the beat of it. And just see what you come up with and we can share them aloud. Any questions? Okay, so here we go. It'll be Does everybody have something? At least a line? Okay. So, what do you got? Ideally, what would really be fun is if we go around the room and everybody shares a line or two, and if it's in the same meter, they blend together and create like a group poem, which is really fun to hear. So let's try that, okay? And then as you're listening to the group poem, when you hear somebody else's that sounds like there might be a question about it, maybe you hear one that sounds like it only has 3 or like the pattern's a little off, make a note if you want, and we'll come back and discuss them all a little bit. But before we do the reading aloud, does anyone have any comments about what the experience was like for you?
I feel like I'm not used to writing like this, so it was a fun challenge. I feel like with practice I could funnel better into where I want to.
Funnel is a really good verb for it. Yeah, and it does take a little practice. Would you say it's that your mind was getting in the way?
I think I've got a bad habit of being overly verbose, so I'm like trying to paint a picture that doesn't need all that I want to give it. It could be simpler and
Yeah, that's really interesting. Because around the same time in the history of poetry that people stopped writing in meter and began writing more on the page, the emphasis on imagery and descriptive language became much more central. So you have William Carlos Williams saying no ideas but in things, and the Imagist school, and that all coincided with free verse. It was almost as if they were replacing the body rhythm with this mental imagery. And it's really a different way of writing. So and when you think about it, like they always say in creative writing, maybe you've even heard this in your classes, don't be abstract, right? Don't be abstract. But in fact, when you think about it, some of the great poems that people really love and admire are rather abstract. Like, some of Emily Dickinson's poems tend to be rather abstract sometimes, not always, but after great pain, a formal feeling comes. I don't know, maybe that, or there are times when abstract language can actually sound very juicy and real if it has a beautiful rhythm to it and a beautiful word music. So this whole idea of abstraction came in sort of more with losing the music. So that's an interesting point. So yeah, getting your mind out of the way that's wanting to paint these elaborate pictures, maybe allowing your rhythm of your body to come in and quieting your mind a bit. Other experiences? What was it like?
It was interesting trying to get over I was trying to give myself like a specific direction to go when I found that it flowed better when I just started writing words that fit the meter rather than try to force it in like a certain direction.
Yeah, exactly. It's a lot of it is letting go, right? Yeah, it's the training you have to do. I like it because it makes me feel like I have a dancing companion, like a dancing partner, like the meter and the form is like it's not just me and a page, but it's like there's something else right there that you have to take into account, which I love that feeling. What was it like for you?
I was gonna say like something similar. Like I think I started with an idea of how what I would probably be about or anything like that, and then it was easier to just think of words that fit in.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so you figured that out. It's an amazing experience. Yeah.
I was really surprised that it came pretty naturally to me. Like right when you said to start, and you like were doing the tapping, like I just heard it in my head and I just started writing.
Wow, so fun. Okay, well, any other comments? Any other people want to share experience? You want to share? I just go by people's faces. Some people look like they want to share something.
I mean, it was a little more challenging for me to write just because I haven't written poetry a lot, so it was
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah, you were there at the reading last night. You were talking about the novel, right? Yeah. Yeah. So, okay. Well, why don't we start, let's start here. Let's start with you since it came naturally to you. Just say your line or two, and then we'll just kind of go table by table, and everybody at one table just say your line, and we'll see if we can hear it as like one big collective poem.
When I sit and look straight with my legs crossing tight, then my heart races fast like the cold of the night.
Woo! Okay, keep going. Next table. This one.
Oh, I was in the bathroom, sorry.
From the sounds of the wasps to the house covered with moss.
From the sounds of the
Wasps.
everybody at that table. Can you say it loud, please? I worry this moment I will sing as bump, bump. Okay. Do you want to do yours?
Sorry, I was in the bathroom.
Oh, we're just reading aloud.
Yeah, I didn't get one because I was
Okay,
getting
that's okay. Okay, you? You want to do a table?
The beach was so cold as the winter had just begun. The seagulls were clear and the season was done. Her heart chattered slowly like a wave on the shore, and her eyes blinked gently in a fold of lost hope.
Wow. Nice and loud, please, so everybody can hear you.
I'm falling again, my feet they fall loose, the walls they squeeze tighter, as does the noose.
I wrote one sentence, and I don't think it's right, like at all. I said she came down the steps radiating her own beauty.
As she came down the steps. Okay, so here's an example, actually. Can we pause for a minute? Can we
Yeah,
pause for an example?
that's totally fine.
Okay, so here we have, as she came down the steps, radiating her own beauty. Okay, so how can we easily test it and see where it fits and where it needs to be fixed? Okay, so as she came down the steps, radiating her own beauty, the simplest way is to just exaggerate it. Exaggerate it and see what fits and what doesn't. So we have this courageous writer here. As she came down the steps, radiating, because you emphasize what you expect to hear, and then you can easily tell when it fits and when it doesn't, right? As she came down the steps, radiating her own beauty. Right? Okay, so we know what's wrong now, right? The first 6 syllables are perfect. As she came down the steps. And then we have radiate, when actually the word is radiate, right? So we know exactly what needs to be fixed. Instead of a word that goes one cup cup, we need a word that goes cup cup one, or a phrase. So how can we fix that? She glowed in her beauty. Okay, you can do that. As she came down the steps, she glowed in her beauty. But right now we're aiming for exact, cup, cup one. We saw Byron had a little variation where he left out a cup. But right now we don't want to leave out any cups. We want to actually make it exact because we're learning. So, okay, as she came down the steps, let's try to change it and fix it with the least changing possible, right? As she came down the steps, what if we want to keep the word radiate? We want to keep all the words we can. The simplest way to fix it would be what? As she came down the steps, radiate. We could add a couple of cups, right? After steps. What if we tried that? As she came down the steps, bump, bump, radiating her own beauty. That's radiating. That sounds sort of okay, right? It's, it's unnatural, but it doesn't sound wrong. As she came down the steps, how about what?
As she came down the steps, radiating so bright.
As she came down the steps,
Radiating so bright.
radiate what?
Radiating so bright.
Oh, as she came down the steps, radiating so bright. But it's not radiate, it's radiating. So that wouldn't work, right?
What was the original?
What's the original?
She came down the steps radiating her own beauty.
Okay. So she came down the steps. As she came down the steps, radiating her own beauty. As she came down the steps, radiating. Yours is closer, but it still has the problem that after steps, we're supposed to have 2 cups, and it's giving us a wand. You know, you can't force it. You look up in the dictionary, it's going to tell you radiate begins with a wand, right? So that won't work. What if we add a couple of little cups between steps and rade? She was. That would work. As she came down the steps, she was radiating. That's okay, right? Because ing is a secondary stress in that word. If you look up in the dictionary, it'll give you the primary stress on rade, the secondary stress on ing, right? Radiating. So as she came down the steps, she was radiating her something. But anyway, that's a good start. We got, but now we have 3 feet that work. So these things are called feet. I don't think I mentioned that. When it repeats, cup, cup, one, cup, cup, one, cup, cup, one, each time it says cup, cup, one, that's called a foot, which I love because it's like you're dancing, right? This is like having a dance partner writing a meter. It makes it so much less lonely to write poetry in my experience. I just love it. So each one is a foot. And actually in ancient Greek, they, as I said, they used to dance to it. So they'd be like, bum, 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 bum. As she came down the steps, she was radiating. Da, da, da. Anyway, so she was. That's a great way to fix it. As she came down the steps, she was radiating. Maybe her own beauty is too long, needs to be fixed a little, but that gives you an idea, right? So before we go on and hear everybody else's, is there anyone else who maybe just read a line where if you're not sure if it fits? Should we try the same process? Try the fixing thing? Do you want to try yours?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Alright. Though an eternity had passed and gone, another will last and go on.
Though an eternity had passed and gone, another will last and go on. So some of this, does some of it sound like it's in the right meter, right? Which part? Which part sounds right? Though an eternity had passed and gone, another will last and go on, right? Though an eternity had passed and gone, another will last and go on. It's the ending is perfect, right? You just made an and or something. Yes, or some little word. Yes, another will last and go on. Cup, cup, one, cup, cup, one, cup, cup, one. Yes, another will last and go on. So the second part of it is perfect. So the first part, though an eternity has come and gone, that's actually the meter we're going to be doing tomorrow in my next lecture, which you're all welcome to attend, I hope, but depending on what your teacher says. But yeah, the next lecture, that is going to be the meter of air, iambic, which is though an eternity has come and gone. It's just cup one, cup one, cup one. But what we're looking for is cup, cup one. So anybody have a sense how to fix that one? Though an eternity has come and gone. How can we turn that one into fire? Maybe start with, I would say start with the second half
Okay.
and just get rid of that first part.
Alright.
Yeah, so then you'd have, if you're okay with that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sure.
That's actually a really handy technique for writing poetry. Sometimes people try to fix the first part. Sometimes it helps to just get rid of the first part, keep the good part, and go from there. That's actually what I would suggest instead of messing with it. So you then, what's the part that works again?
Another will last and go on.
Okay. Yes, another will last and go on. An eternity. Oh, that reminds me. That taught me. Okay. An eternity has come and gone. That'll work, right? An eternity has come and gone. Just take away the though. An eternity has come and gone, and another will last and go on. So that's it. Perfect. Okay. Somebody else want to fix one? Anybody? What about this table? Anybody? Did you have one you wanted to fix? So let's just keep reading aloud. Let's go through the rest, the people who haven't read yet. You all read.
I have not read. My great ancestors came to my long aching heart. I could feel all their blessings form new buds of hope of my life and my visions and bittersweet dreams came a newly blooms life to my soul, yes indeed.
You channeled. Thank you. Wow. That's fantastic. Thank you so much. Yeah, sometimes it just hits, right? The meter, the moment, and the poet all hit together and you get a magic moment like that. Thank you so much for sharing that. Wow. What about you?
Oh. Feel the beat through your soul as the rhythm will take control.
Feel the beat through your soul as the rhythm will take control. Feel the beat through your soul as the rhythm will take control. Okay, which parts fit and which parts are not quite right?
Will take.
Yeah, will take. But the other part's perfect, right? Feel the beat through your soul. Let the rhythm control. You can just take out the will and that, and then you got it. Feel the beat through your soul. Let the rhythm control, and then you just keep on going. Control all your words and your feet till you dance to the beat. Thank you. Yes.
With the wind through the trees and the mud on his feet, on his face was the ray of the glistening sun, so he stood on the ground without looking around.
Did she nail it? One more time.
The whole thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Nice and loud. Now listen to this. See if you can hear anything that's off.
With the wind through the trees and the mud on his feet, on his face was the ray of the glistening sun, so he stood on the ground without looking around.
Did she get it? Anything wrong? So he stood on the ground without looking around. That glistening is subtle. She's pushing it, but she didn't break it, did she?
Wasn't it?
Of the glistening sun. On his face were the rays of the glistening sun. That's pretty subtle. Take a word like glistening, which has a different rhythm. Glistening is one cup cup. It's not cup cup one, but she made it fit. So she nailed it. Perfect. Yeah.
As my mind rests at peace and all sound falls asleep, through a thin veil of fog, rays of moonlight do creep.
Woo! Another one. Through the thin veil of fog, rays of moonlight do creep. You've got the meter perfectly. So your next challenge is going to be just to take out the do or whatever. You know, I know you're aware of that already. But sometimes when you're starting out, it's fine to throw in this silly extra words like do, creep, but you know, eventually you want to move beyond that, and you're already there mostly. So, here's.
As I watch as he goes down the street on his bike, I can feel myself losing my once quiet mind.
As I watch as he goes down the street on his bike, I can feel myself losing my once quiet mind. Wow, that's great. That makes me want to hear the whole story. That's really fun. Okay, thank you. And the rhythm, perfect. Yeah?
I said, towards the light of the sun came the sign of a smile.
In the light of the sun came the sign of a smile. Oh God, it's beautiful. I want to write that on my wall. Thank you. In the light of the sun came the sign of a smile. Original, beautiful, and metrically perfect.
I just said, in times during the most amount of stress, the whole world feels like a chaotic mess.
Whoa! One more time.
In times during the most amount of stress, the whole world feels like a chaotic mess.
In times during the most amount of stress, the whole world feels like a chaotic mess. That's actually the rhythm of air, and it's perfect for the rhythm of air that I'm doing tomorrow. Because you hear how it's in times the bump amount of stress, in times that have the most amount of stress, the whole world feels like a chaotic mess. You hear it's cup one, cup one, cup one, cup one. So with this one, we're doing cup one, but you nailed that one perfectly. So just save that one for tomorrow.
Was as the Lord charged forth, standing on heights, his eyes were filled with pure demise. As the Lord charged forth, standing on heights, his eyes were filled with pure demise.
As the Lord charged forth, standing on heights, his eyes were filled with pure demise. Wow. Strong rhythm, again, this is the rhythm of air. Not surprising, as we're going to talk about in tomorrow's lecture, the iambic rhythm of air, the cup one, is the most common by far. And so sometimes we slip into that. So that's a good one for tomorrow again, but for this one you probably want another cup. Thank you. And last one.
Yeah, which we ended with hers. When the rain come pouring on the, this is like an experience I had. When the rain came pouring on the broken car window, all the pieces or inserted all the leather in
Oh, you got loads of.
members. Yeah, I
Oh, you
wrote a
got
lot.
loads in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just, a few extra words. I would suggest, and this is good advice for everybody, try to use it like on the back of a sheet, make sure you have enough space. When you're doing this, make sure you have enough space to go all the way across the page. Like if you try to squeeze it into a small part of your page, it can confuse you. You need enough space to go all the way across. So give yourself at least 8.5 inches across. Try that, you'll be amazed at the difference. Okay, thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you. I feel pleased to thank Dr. Finch for the lecture and for the workshop. Thank you. I'll give you a chance to thank her.
Thank
you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Dr. Maria, for bringing your class today.